And since then, it's been hard because we've tried different topics. We've tried giving away kits and people picking them up, but there's just nothing like being in person. And also they had a free lunch and they always enjoyed that. So we're just looking forward to everybody returning. And as I said, I can't thank Jared and Shakita enough for letting us be part of this pilot. And we've had different numbers of different sessions, and we're hoping that it'll continue to grow. And we hope we have an opportunity to do something in the future. So thank you, thank you.
Yeah, I echo that. Thank you, Miss Linda. Whoever else wants to go next. Usually how we last like 1.5 times, I want to say, because we did it differently the first time that we introduced ourselves, we had a discussion question, but I just want to give people like opportunity to do like general discussions, general introductions on where they're from and whatnot, like their role. So Casey, if you want to go next, you're welcome.
Mine will be pretty quick and easy. I'm the marketing specialist here at the King Arts, and here I'm the Zoom host. So I'm just making sure things go smoothly with the technology. That's all.
Thank you. And yeah, I will go next, and then we can have Miss Charlene and Miss Lucia if you want to reintroduce yourself. So I'm Fariha. My name is pronounced very similar to how it's spelled. I have a attention-seeking animal by my side. I use she, her pronouns, and I will be here, I guess, for a total of 7 to 8 sessions with Miss Linda, Casey, and whoever else joins. And we may be, I'm not going to say, let's go there, but we have 7 or 8 sessions together, and I am the lead writing facilitator. I'm excited to be here and be part of the King Arts Complex community in partnership with the Ohio Arts Council. So that's kind of my role. So I just help with the movement of the way the 1.5 hours together works. So yeah, whoever would like to go next, Miss Lucia or Miss Charlene. I appreciate you being here. Lucia is our OG because this is your 3rd time.
Okay, I'm Lucia Dunn. And I got involved with the King Arts Complex years ago. I don't know how many years ago, maybe 7 or 8, because I work with an Eastern meditation group over at OSU, and they let us use their the facilities there to have our practice sessions, and people come and meditate. We were just introducing the practice to the public. It's called Falangafa. And I was there, I think, at the very first Tuesday tea. Went to many of them in person, and I can't agree more with Linda. There's just nothing like being there in person. And I hope, I look forward to when we can do that again. Thank you.
I think you're muted, Charlene, sorry.
I don't know. I have problems with my speaker. I don't know. I can't hear me. There's problems with the speaker.
Shirley, we can hear you, but it's kind of coming in and out. It's almost like the microphone's picking up like every 10 words that you're saying. I wonder if you could either lean closer into the microphone on your.
Okay, I'll try that and see. Can you hear me now? I don't know. We've had problems with our internet here, so I don't know what's going on. But I'm Charlene Green, a member of the Women's Studies Board, and just glad I can be here. I've been substitute teaching, and now we're taking care of my mother-in-law, who's 102, and so I have to be here on Tuesdays to help out. So, sorry you can't hear me.
It's okay. I think we caught some of that, which is just fine.
Okay.
It's nice to meet you. Can I go next, Fariha? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Jared Small, as my Zoom square says, is my name, and I am one of two arts learning coordinators at the Ohio Arts Council, which is a state agency of the state of Ohio, supporting Ohio's artists, arts organizations like the King Arts Complex, schools, all really investing in the state's cultural assets. So, of course, I'm here in Columbus, as I'm guessing as most other folks are as well, and I too pine for the day we can be back in person. I think it's coming. I know we're not quite there yet, but I am just so grateful to the King Arts team, to everyone for being here today and recognizing the power of the arts, whether it's over Zoom or at a Tuesday tea in person. And I know we're in for a treat. Fariha is a brilliant artist, writer, facilitator, one of the best. So I'm excited to be able to just to kind of participate today. I'm sad that I'll probably have to jump out another meeting at a certain awkward midpoint, but pleased to be here for as long as I can. And it's nice to meet you all if I haven't met you already.
Thank you, Jared. I was going to turn my video off. I'm not very good at taking compliments across Zoom either. So we're excited to have you. And I hope you get to stay for a little bit of the writing. We'll do like a part A and then a part B. And so hopefully you can stay for the discussion, like warm up writing activity. And then we go into like a longer writing and discussion. But yeah, Ms. Chiquita, if you wanted to go.
Thank you, Fariha. Yes, my name is Chiquita Mullins-Lee, and I am also one of two arts learning coordinators with the Ohio Arts Council, and really excited about this creative aging program that we've all entered into, and to have this sort of collaboration with the King Arts Complex. I think it's especially meaningful because we're extending into all aspects and all portions of our community. We want to be inclusive on every level. And I think it's exciting that we can have this opportunity today. Because I am familiar with the Tuesday Tea and had a chance to participate. I think it was last year, Martin Luther King Day. And we were able to present to a wonderful group of women. So it's just great to see that this great tradition is still going forward. And I'm looking forward to today. I'm also juggling events. We have a Poetry Out Loud state finals event coming up on Friday that Fariha has also contributed to. She's been a judge for the Columbus region. And I think the last time I saw her was actually during the Columbus region semifinals. So I'm juggling myself and will probably have to jump off a little bit earlier than I would have liked to. But I'm glad to be here today and just glad to see everybody and to see that this is coming together and looking forward to all the next steps. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. So we can go straight into the first writing and discussion, if that's okay with everybody. Let me see what I had. And today is I added a slide as well just a couple minutes ago. Today is the third session. And I will have Miss Linda kind of go over the schedule just for folks to have a better idea of what is coming up in the future, the near future, I should say. All right, can everybody see my screen? All right, so make sure. I will let Miss Linda kind of share the schedule. I didn't go into April yet, Miss Linda, in case we have a change, but I just paused it on March. So if you wanted to kind of go over this, I'll let you do that really quick and then we can go into our writing. And Ms. Linda, if you wanted to share.
Yes, I was trying to unmute.
Oh, sorry. No, I just wanted to make sure you heard me. Take your time. But I didn't add the April dates, but if you want to kind of talk about March and what, if you're interested to discuss what April may or may not look like, because I know we might switch formats.
Correct. So right now, we are scheduled for March for today and then the 15th and the 29th. And those time frames will be Zoom at noon. That will take us into week 5. And if I'm not mistaken, is the session 90 minutes?
What do you mean, session 6?
I mean, the time frame, was it 6 sessions at 90 minutes each? What was?
Yeah. It should be 7 sessions. Yeah, but we can, yes, basically 6 to 8 in total at 90 minutes.
Okay, so maybe in the next day or two, you and I can get together and work on trying to, that would give us 5 sessions, and we can figure out how to work out the balance. And we do want to definitely have a celebration in person, even for those that didn't participate, that they could come and be part of.
Okay, so yeah, so ideally, I think that we had 8 that you and I had discussed, and the last one being like the celebration, which can be shorter or longer, depending on what your interest is. But I did want to confirm, just for people that are here, that the first, well, not the first, because that's today, but the 15th and the 29th are going to be online via
It will
Zoom.
be Zoom, yes.
Okay, yeah, and then April, we're not sure about, first Tuesday,
Right,
April.
so give me
Okay.
some time till we get some clarification here. Not only is it COVID, but the renovations that we've been going through. While we've been in COVID, we've had the lobby and the auditorium completely remodeled, and we're almost there. So we're gonna have a great big celebration when we open the doors again, because not only are we opening the doors, we have a new lobby and a new Barbara Nicholson auditorium that I think everybody's gonna love. So we'll plan on 15th and 29th, and then I'll get together with you on the balance. If that's okay.
Okay. Great, yeah, that works. I copied the slide from earlier because I wanted to just see if we had time to kind of go over it for purposes of clarification. Does anybody have any logistical questions? I want to make sure we spent time on that as well, in addition to intros. Okay, well, if not, that's great. So our question, our initial, we'll just do like 5 minutes of writing, and then we can go to questions. Let me get this right slide on here too. Is around a continuation of what we did earlier, which is like around community identity and such. Sorry, maybe I'll just have to share it in the, I'm trying to do slideshow, but it's not cooperating. I might have to share it inside the chat. So if we want to just, I'll still pull it up if I can. If we want to just journal for a few minutes on, if you, so I will offer the option of like discussing identity or freedom, because that's the overall kind of our hierarching umbrella of the theme, essentially. That's what I was trying to get at, the umbrella themes of what we're doing. And then today the conversation kind of goes along with like, again, identity, but in a sense of like community. And so I just wanted to see what people think of just exploring the idea of community. So the warm-up discussion writing exercise is, what does community mean to you? And who is your community? What does your community consist of? And I think there's one more question that I'll pull up. So we can just do 5 minutes, and I'll drop this in the chat too. And let me try to share my screen again at the right slide. So yeah, let's do another like 3 to 3.5 minutes, and then we can go from there and have a discussion and go into reading some poems and doing longer writing.
Fariha, do you want us to just sort of jump in and discuss what we're getting?
Yeah.
Ideas of community from this?
Yeah, can you
Because-
see this the proper slide too, those who are looking?
All I can see is warm-up writing and discussion exercise.
Yeah, so it should have a couple questions underneath it.
No,
So,
I don't see. Oh, well, yeah. What does community mean to you?
yeah.
How does
and
community fit into larger society?
Yeah, so if you want to jump in, you can. We're gonna do like 5 minutes of journaling, which is basically wrapping up here in a minute. So you're welcome to start the discussion off, and then we'll do a couple poems after we have this discussion. So
Okay, well, related to what we've been, seeing over the last, I think I've been to every session now. Community is a concept that I think has changed dramatically in the last few years. And I think those of us who are older and have lived through lots of movements and, changes in our society are probably feeling sort of confused. I know I'm feeling confused about exactly what is our community. You go back, especially as it relates to the Afro-American community. We had a sense of the definition of that from Martin Luther King. We had a different sense of the definition from that from Malcolm X. People have been trying to make sense of it, I think, for many decades, and then bringing it into the poetry sphere and what we've been doing. I'm still thinking about the Caged Bird poem from Maya Angelou, and people say, you take the average, you did a survey of the average guy on the street and said, well, what do you think of that poem? Probably the average person would say, well, that's poetry for the African-American community. It's aimed at that sense of community. But I came away with, we're all, it really spoke to me. We all have something about us that makes us a caged bird, clipped wings, tied feet. I think that's one of the great things about poetry and, what you're doing here, bringing us together to understand that. But, and that gets us, my discussion here gets us nowhere except to say that the idea of community is changing. And I think we all need to sort of try to make sense of it in our own minds and what it means in our own lives. And I think the poetry helps us do that.
yeah, thank you. And I also didn't pronounce your name properly.
Well, I said, well, it's a name in every Romance language, the Spanish, the Latinos say Lucia, and the Italians say Lucia, and most English speaking countries say Lucia. I say Lucia, but I get it, whatever you want to call me.
Okay, no, I mean, I'll go with what you want, but I was thinking of the Spanish as well.
Yeah, right. That's the most common pronunciation these days. That's fine.
Okay, no, I'm happy to say how you, I used to do the same thing, and I try to be more intentional because my name also is multicultural. So it shows up in East African culture and South Asian culture and Turkish culture too. So there's different ways to say it, but I really appreciate you starting the discussion and bringing us back, because I am trying to see just, like not only see how we tie our poems together, but our own writing, but like also what's happened, like what's happening in the world around us, and how does community form when we're not able to meet in person, and what does community mean when we're grieving, or we're disjointed in terms of how we see the current circumstance of like forgetting that COVID is important, so there's so many dynamics. I've been thinking about like what community means when we're still on these platforms, which I appreciate and respect, because physical safety is really important. And I know it's not ideal, because I am very much somebody that is, feeds off energy, and thrives off like the energy around me. And in Zoom, obviously it's a little bit different, but I just wonder like what happens when we have to recreate community, and when our community shifts, because the people in our community and their perspective shift, not the community itself. So I kind of want to throw that in there and then have other people chime in, and welcome Miss Karen, who also has been here since beginning. I dropped the, I stopped the share screen. I dropped the warm-up writing exercise that we did for like a few minutes into the chat. But this one is shifting more to community rather than like, we started with identity and freedom. And so we're kind of just shifting. So I wanted to give space for other people to share, based off what Miss Lucia said about, community changing and movements and whatnot, and then even how community is in this moment with the pandemic and the first day of Women's History Month. You're welcome to tie that in there, or really whatever works for folks.
So I put this headset on. Can you hear me better? No?
Oh,
Yeah, you're welcome. If it's easier for you, Miss Charlene, you're welcome to put some stuff in the chat.
Okay.
And I can read it for you. That's one option, and you're welcome, or try again, because I know it's a little bit choppy. So for me, I can hear some of you say and not other folks.
Keep saying a few words though. I think we might be onto something.
Yeah, I found this. I don't know if this works better or not.
that's better.
Okay. So I wrote down that community to me means being involved with others in all aspects that directly impact your life. And it also means relaying that information, good or bad, positive or negative, to anyone who needs to hear in the larger society. So that's what it means to me. So not anything physical, but more so participatory. I think just being a participant is critical. So those were my thoughts.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad that you shared verbally too. Thank you for that. Yeah, it puts a very different intersection into this conversation. I don't know, Kieran, if you're comfortable sharing. I'm very comfortable calling on you.
No, I was just quickly thinking over the idea of community, and thanks to social media, I am part of a very larger community than I was before the pandemic. The poetry family, my poetry family has expanded exponentially because of Zoom. I was also thinking that community is often just a group of people who have something in common, a common goal, a common focus, because like the matters of what's going on in the Ukraine takes a different face for me, because I'm part of a Facebook group around a particular novel, series of novels. And the cover model for our novels, for about 15 of these, is in Ukraine. And so it has a whole another focus because of the community that I belong to online. We have a more personal stake now in the Ukraine because our cover model is over there. So community it can be formed quickly and have lifelong implications. These are people that you will be connected with, hopefully beyond Zoom, the pandemic, etc., that you will have made friends and community for life. So,
Thank you. That's also very like I should have had you close with that. It's a very optimistic end of it too. So I appreciate it. And I'll if anybody here is interested to fill their entire schedule up with Zoom poetry sessions, then Miss Karen is your lead, because she's extremely I think extremely is not even the appropriate word, but yeah, like I think she fills 12 hours of her day with Zoom poetry. At least when the pandemic started, I'm like, oh, if I don't have something to do for 1 hour, Karen can plug me into something that she has found in Australia or somewhere, which is really interesting. So I encourage you to use her as a resource in a way that I am not, because I also use Karen, like when people ask me stuff, I'm like, oh, of course I have ideas. I'll go to Karen's page and see what she has posted recently. So thank you, Karen. Any other thoughts on community, and like just on how, maybe a good question that ties into all of the comments is how your own community has shifted in the last, maybe 2 months, 2 years, your own community, or what you considered a community. Because I know for me, as Karen mentioned, like the poetry and writing community that offered friendship, socialization, healing, camaraderie was very important to me. And so I wonder like what I would have done if I didn't have an alternative. If I would have been able to give myself that in isolation, which I don't think I would have. So I'm curious to know how people's own communities have shifted very recently or in the past 2 years, or really whatever across your lifetime.
I kind of feel like community is history where you grew up or where you were a part of, and you always have a lot of memories. And for myself, growing up on the east side, the changes, and now the new beginnings with the new King Bronzeville breaking out tomorrow, I think. The new name where we're going to have recognition is our own area, and friends, lifelong friends. That's what community is for me.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And I've been thinking, so like I know there's a lot of people here from different like ethnic and racial backgrounds. And I feel like how we define community from generation changes, and also depends on your like literal landscape. And so, my parents both immigrated from South Asia, like in the 70s and 80s. And my mom is actually visiting her 90-plus-year-old my grandmother right now, taking care of her. And so I think about how even though my mom has been in the US for however old I am, for a long time, in this case, yeah, so 30 plus, like 35 plus years, she still has to connect with her mom to feel like this sense of belonging and community. And I know like family is, a topic of like, can be not controversial, but like family is, not chosen. And so it can be considered a community or like imposed community. And there's lots of different thoughts on it. But I just wonder how even for my mom, like this intimate connection with her mom who's so far away is so important. Which I don't know if I think it's beautiful, but I also think for me, I'm like, is it a dependent, you know what I mean? Like, is it dependency? Is it connection? Is it because you feel you don't have family, that you call your mother, thousands of miles away in different time zones and whatnot, and are dependent on her advice, even though, my grandmother is very much intellectually present. So yes, I just wonder about like what that means and how I view it very differently. My connection with my mother, and or my connection with people around me, my community of origin that I grew up in, and how I am now as a transplant in Ohio, how it shifted so much, even in the last 3 years. And so I think it's like, where do you feel you need to be at that time, right? These last few years, I'm working on my healing. And before I may have been working on my, climbing this mountain of like getting accolades and acknowledgement in academia. And so I think it's kind of like, where is your community in the moment you need it? And I'll leave that there. I have very many thoughts, and like an octopus, like I can go in this different direction, have a different leg for each direction, but I wanted to see if anybody had any other thoughts before we share ideas, or not share, read poems together, which are, this time I will give you a plug that they are a warning, I should say. They're not, these ones aren't neutral. I know I mentioned I kind of pick more morbid stuff, but these ones are definitely not on the neutral side. So any other thoughts from folks? Jared, Chiquita, if you want to chime in, Casey, I want to give you an opportunity before we transitioned.
Thank you. I'll just add, it's great to hear how others are kind of approach these prompts, and these are great prompts, by the way. I don't think often about the various communities that one might belong to, but to me, when you ask the question, how does your community fit into larger society? I kind of envision like it's a huge puzzle, like with all kinds of disparate puzzle pieces that are all different kinds of shapes and sizes, and that our various communities, kind of make up these small pieces of the puzzle. And, they might not all fit together all the time, but that the bigger picture is that it is all one big connected puzzle. We are all connected. And sometimes maybe those pieces of the puzzle don't fit, or they're in conflict somehow. But that if you step back, there is a connection. We all are connected. I like the idea of trying to focus on the positivity, because especially nowadays, it feels like our communities are just always in conflict. You can't open the newspaper without seeing two communities in conflict now. And it's so easy to get down on yourselves and to focus on the negative. And to some extent, I think that's warranted, because that's what could breed change. But trying to both identify your community like the larger picture, I feel like it's a necessity for everyone these days. That's why I'm so grateful to get to think about this with you all, because it's such an important question. What communities do you belong to, and what does that look like in the bigger picture? That's life. So, I'm off my soapbox. It's a good question. Thank you for letting me weigh in.
Yeah, thank you. And anyone else? I don't have any reason to push anybody, so no pressure. I just want to allow room if anybody else wants to share before we transition to reading. And you're welcome to share really anytime. So this is not the only opportunity, obviously.
Well, I like what Jared had to say, and while he was saying it, I was thinking of, I have a puzzle. I haven't put it together, but I have a puzzle, and it's a picture of a dog, but it's actually made of all of these little separate photos. And that's kind of what community is in a lot of ways. There are all these little separate things, and then they go together and they make a big picture, but we have to figure out how they fit. But that way, when Jared was mentioning that was what came to mind, all these separate things that go into and become a bigger picture. So,
and I'll just add briefly, I've had the experience of living in a lot of different places. I grew up in Atlanta, and that was, I lived in several very tight-knit communities, because we moved quite a bit. So different communities in Atlanta, so Southern upbringing. And then going away to college, that was a whole different kind of community, Vassar College that was predominantly white, but a very strong Black community within that I became a part of. And then just about every place I've lived, I've had a chance to kind of plug into a community. And then, coming to Columbus, feeling a whole different kind of community there, but still finding community here in Columbus and, other places where I live, Nashville, Athens, Georgia. And I've noticed kind of this ebb and flow. And particularly, I think over the last few years, I've noticed how crisis seems to help create community. So we went through this thing with COVID, and we've become this Zoom, this digital virtual community. And then there was the uprising with George Floyd. And so then we were all, there was this, the protests and all the community that was built around that. And then with what's happening in Ukraine, again, we have this global community that's being created. So it's interesting how crisis brings us together, and we realize that we are really more common than we are. And when we join together, then that feeds community. And if we could do without crisis, I think that would also be great.
Yeah, thank you. I almost feel bad. Like, I wish I do have poems off the cuff that I can pull, but these ones are kind of heavy. So I'm almost wondering if I should change it up. That's to something that's not, because this is actually like turning into a Wednesday or first Tuesday tea sermon, and I'm very uplifted. But yeah, so if these poems are too heavy, first I want to recognize that, and second, I'm very happy to shift I do try to push myself to read, like immerse myself more in stuff that isn't just as heavy for many reasons, even though my own writing is often heavy. But yeah, I'm very happy to shift. So I just wanted to put that out there. And let me share my screen. Can you all see the slideshow again?
Mhm.
Okay, I know I'm not sharing it, but the first poem that I had, well, there's two. So like last week we had the 4 poems. And so I just kind of separated, we did 2. And then these are the other 2. And so the reason I picked, well, this Rita Dove poem is because like the anniversary of Trayvon Martin's like execution was, I want to say, in the last few days. And his dad actually spoke at Columbus State for Black History Month. It was really interesting. It was a really powerful talk. I don't know what I was expecting, but it was great. He talked about his own personal life. It was, yeah, it was, the ending was very uplifting. So I have this poem, and then I have something by Jericho Brown. And so we can just start with one. I'll have somebody read, and I'm going to quickly drop the link in the chat as well, so we have access to it. But does anybody want to read this one by Rita Dove? And you're welcome to read on your screen or kind of whatever works for you. Oh, sorry. Okay. I just dropped it in chat too. So whoever would like to read, go ahead. And this one's not too long. I don't think either of them are super long. Like I know in the past we've done longer ones, but this one is in between. Miss Lucia, did you want to read?
Okay, do you want me to start off with the Williams?
Yeah, you can. It's up to you. I know it's, I'll make it bigger too, because I know that can be annoying.
Okay, well, all right. It is difficult to get the news from poems, yet men die miserably every day for lack of what is found there. Hear me out, for I too am concerned, and every man who wants to die at peace in his bed besides. So that was Flower. And you want me to go on to the next one? All right, why don't I read the first 2 paragraphs of it, and then somebody else can take over.
Okay.
Move along. You don't belong here. This is what you're thinking. Thinking drives you nuts these days. All that talk about rights and law abidance when you can't even walk your own neighborhood in peace and quiet. Get your black ass gone. You're thinking again. Then what? Matlock's on TV, and here you are, vigilant, weary, exposed to the elements on a wet winter's evening in Florida, when all's not right, but no one sees it. Where are they? The law, the enforcers, blind as a bunch of lazy bats can be, holsters dangling from coat hooks above their desk as they jaw the news between donuts. Hey, it tastes good. Shoving your voice down a throat, thinking only of sweetness. Go on, choke on that. Did you say something? Are you thinking again? Stop and get your ass gone. Your blackness, that casual little Red Riding Hood. I'm just on my way home attitude, as if this street was his to walk on. Do you hear me talking to you, boy? How dare he smile, jiggling his goodies in that tiny, shiny bag, his black paw crinkling it. How dare he tinkle their laughter at you? Okay, somebody else go.
Does somebody want to finish the last part of that? There's only one more stanza.
I can finish if you can hear me. Here's a fine basket of riddles. If a mouth shoots off and no one's around to hear it, who can say which came first? Push or shove, bang or whimper? Which is news fit to write home about? That's the end.
Is that the end?
Yes,
didn't-
that is the end.
Okay, sorry, I would have finished. I didn't realize it was so short.
Oh, no, that's fine. Yeah, this is 3 stanzas. Let me scroll back to the top and then maybe we can give like a 30 seconds for folks just to reread whatever they want. And you're welcome to look in the chat. I know it's annoying when people scroll. So let's do that and then we can discuss this quickly. I realize this is not light by any means. It's kind of heavy and relates some, in many ways to what's going on in the world. So yeah, and then we can discuss it and then go to the second poem and see how they tie together. And then thoughts on this poem.
Well, it's very disturbing. I think it captures a lot of what was on a lot of people's hearts and minds over this event with Trayvon Martin.
Yeah, I think it is very heavy. And I wonder if you feel like it relates. I thought about what you were talking about when you were reading this, what you mentioned earlier, how community has changed and shifted. Like in terms of, literally the literal, tangible, geographical community. And you talked about their near East Side and your neighborhood. And so that's what I was thinking when you were reading as well.
Yeah, when I think about it, I guess I get depressed, disappointed, because I can't understand why people feel like they have a right to do something and other people don't. And so, you see instances of people saying, well, you don't belong here. Well, who are you to say that? And that's what we're seeing in this particular poem, the fact that someone has made a decision that the other person doesn't belong there. And it just speaks to, and I won't even say that communities have changed, because I think it's always been there. The changes in people's attitudes toward others. And it's just more outward now than it used to be. I grew up in the South. So this, I look at this and I say, we have nothing other than people being more outspoken about superiority and inferiority. So that's what I see here.
Thank you. Yeah, and that resonates with me because I think we assume that current events aren't really a cycle, right? That this is not a cyclical war that communities have gone through. We want to look at it, in more intense terms. So I agree with you that I think sometimes we assume it's this something is new, but really it's a cyclical pattern of, I wonder if it's a cyclical pattern of oppression, shifting, bystand. I don't know which one kind of it has the importance for this reflection, even in my own head.
I think a lot of it is that underlying current that is 400, 500, 600 years old. It jumps right at you. The one line, I'm just okay, that I'm just on my way home attitude, as if this street was his to walk on. And that was what Miss Charlene said. I don't that she doesn't understand how people can say where someone belongs. And yet there are people who feel that they have that right to say you don't belong there. I'll give you a kind of a funny instance. In the 70s, while I was still in college, my dad retired from the Air Force, and my parents bought a home in Beaver Creek, which is one of the communities outside, close to the base, outside Dayton. We had a home of records on the west side of Dayton, but when my dad retired, then they bought a home in Beaver Creek. Beaver Creek's the kind of community, suburban community, where Black people stand out. I mean, I moved home to go to a training program, and when I went around the corner to the church to vote one election, and I'm practically greeted at the door with, "Hi, your parents haven't come in to vote yet." Because everybody knows the Black people in that community, basically. It's like, they know they're all connected. And I had an incident where I was down at the gas station at the corner of North Fairfield, right off of 35. And this group of teenagers, probably 15, 16-year-old boys, and one of them yelled out the window, "Go back to Xenia," meaning go back to the Black side of Xenia, a community, a town down the road. And I chuckled, because I'm like, dude, my parents have owned a house just right up the street longer than you've been on this earth. How dare you tell me that I don't belong? And that's one of the things, like Ms. Charlene said, how are there people that want to tell you that you don't belong in the community in which you are geographically situated?
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, that's just sad. I used to live in Beaver Creek, and my older brother lives in Xenia. So to hear youth talking like that is just, it's a bit emotional. It's just sad. Sorry.
Yeah, I also grew up in the South. Like my parents decided to buy a house like in rural suburban Texas. And it was very, like, we weren't allowed to go. Like, my dad didn't allow us to go out at night because he said, "You don't know who's out there following you." But I'm like, "But you bought a house in this neighborhood." So I had like a lot of, like we had a little like community mosque, and there was like multiple like handmade bombs and stuff that were put in there. And like, I think so much of what like the oppression that micro and macro that like myself and my community experience were so like, like now when I see it, people are like, "That's crazy." I'm like, no, it's not crazy. Like, this stuff happens every day. Like, I've had my scarf taken off multiple times. When I was a kid, like my friends were followed with guns. And so it's like, we didn't even see that as super offbeat, because it was, I don't know if I want to say we were expecting it. And I also want to say, I don't think it's exclusive just because I'm from the South or from Texas. I think people assume like, we're out here cowboy country. And obviously cowboy culture isn't necessarily from Anglo culture, but yeah, I appreciate you sharing that, Karen, because I think
Also,
so much normalized. We just expect people to be inappropriate.
Also, what you're saying too, Fariha, part of it is the intersectionality of hatred, because you were followed for any number of reasons: religion, color of skin, being a woman, because there is a war against women that colors everything. So there's always any number of figures why you might be followed, oppressed, but it's just that there are people that make judgments that you don't belong in the space that you're in. and they want to express that to you. So
Yeah, and I think it's what do you do with your energy? You know, like I don't know if I ever responded. Maybe out of one time where I was like running to hit somebody, and then I realized they were a lot bigger than me. Which is always the case when it comes to like, I get upset. I'm like, this is not gonna work physically as a match. And I also don't obviously like to operate like that, even as a young person or as an adult. So yeah, that's an interesting point. I think it's like, what do people spend their energy on? When I was in high school, my teacher forgot and didn't care how to say my name. So she referred to me as like the Black slave girl from the Crucible. She thought that was like an appropriate name.
Tuba?
Yeah, so she was like, oh, well, we'll just call you Tutuba since we're reading that. So, and I didn't even say like, oh, well, that's not my name. And I think that's like very racially biased and you should be fired. But like, I think, you know, that's why I think the days of good intentions are over. That's my personal opinion. Like you had good intentions, but demeaning somebody where you don't care to say their name and just refer to them as the next convenient brown girl in the book, you know, that is a heathen according to the book doesn't really help. So yeah,
That's a major microaggression.
yeah,
It's like, you're not important enough for me to learn your name and tell you and call you by your name. So I'll just name you Toby instead of Kintakunde.
yeah, it is. It's definitely, I think it hits a lot of aggression boundaries on different levels because it was definitely explicitly like, very biased. The next, let me give it a couple seconds for folks who want to maybe share something else. And then the next poem also kind of really funnels into what we're talking about around this idea of belonging and specifically Black belonging. And so this one also is definitely not any lighter, I'll put it that way. And it's a lot shorter and deals with the same subject area. So I want to just allow people to kind of share a couple things if they want to, and then we can do the Jericho Brown tradition poem. All right, anybody interested to share anything else and or read from the screen? And let me copy this as well into the chat.
I can read. I'm gonna switch over though to the screen where I already have it pulled up. But
okay, go ahead.
Otherwise I have to do like this in order to see it. Okay. I'll read the tradition. Let me get back over there. Hold on. All right. The tradition, Jericho Brown. Aster, nasturtium, delphinium. We thought fingers in dirt meant it was our dirt. Learning names in heat, in elements classical, philosophers said could change us. Stargazer, foxglove. Summer seemed to bloom against the will of the sun, which news reports claim flamed hotter on this planet than when our dead fathers wiped sweat from their necks. Cosmos, baby's breath. Men like me and my brothers filmed what we planted for proof we existed before too late, sped the video to see blossoms brought in seconds, colors you expect in poems where the world ends, everything cut down. John Crawford, Eric Garner, Mike Brown. That was it.
Yeah, thank you. I want to allow folks just a space to let this sit. I also realize it's very uncomfortable to let sit. So if you wanted to read it again or, close your screen so you don't have to see the poem, we can just continue the discussion. That's fine. And then thoughts on this piece, and we can even tie it back into craft. Doesn't necessarily need to be about the content. I know we've been discussing content and community, which is important, but I do want to allow the opportunity just to talk about what is happening in the poem, because both of these are on the shorter end, but stylistically, themes that you see that are different than what we talked about. If we don't want to discuss content, those are other options. Anybody who would like to share?
It's a very dense, concise poem that, you know, gets its point across with an economy of words. It's really good. And I love that even with the italics for names of the plants, and then he ends it with italics for the names of what's been cut down, the people who've been cut down.
Oh yeah, from the first to the last line.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's obvious because they're both italicized, but I didn't even put that together.
Yep. The names.
Well, I'd like to say, I mean, all of these poems, you know, make us dig deep into our thinking about things and help us understand how somebody else is thinking. And the bottom line is like, now where do we go? How does this change us somehow for the better? What can we take away and use to try to, I don't know. So, you know, it seems so stale to say bring change in the world and all of this, but I mean, you know, that is what this is all about. And how do we get there? What do we take away from this? I always think about the famous, I guess he was a physicist, Maxwell, who said, science makes progress funeral by funeral. And his point was that, you know, you don't change anybody's mind who's grown up with a certain model of science, you know, the world is flat or whatever it was, pre-Einstein, I guess he was talking about, you know, the way you view things, you can't change people. You just have to wait for them to die out. But that's a very pessimistic view. And, you know, I rather think about, you know, all right, how can we change? What do we see that can make things different?
Yeah, I didn't interpret that quote that way at all.
Oh, you didn't? How did you interpret it every day? You know, that's
oh,
how
like
I
just like
always
it takes
took it.
somebody dying to like have awareness and open your eyes about like the truth. So I'm glad you explained it, because I thought
Well, that's how I always took it. Well, I've seen discussions by historians of science who say that. So, you know, maybe that's the standard view, but that doesn't have to mean that's what was truly in his mind when he said it.
Yeah, because I was like, oh, maybe like it takes somebody to die for us to, you know, get it together. But yeah, very interesting.
Well,
And I agree about the then what, because I often, my mind operates like that too. Like, what do we do with what's in front of us on a personal level, right? On a larger, you know, communal level and on a group level. So I think about that as well.
I mean, can people change and how?
Yeah.
Because I think it's very hard. I don't want to think it takes, you know, just this generation having to pass off the earth before they can be changed. You know, that's how I always interpreted the Maxwell quote. I don't want to think it's like that, but man, change is hard.
Yeah, Lucia, I think that, yeah, I like the way that you interpreted the Maxwell quote, because it actually is very biblical. You got to remember that the Israelites were doomed to wander in the wilderness for 40 years until this generation is dead.
Yes, very good point, Karen. Yes, I hadn't connected it to that, but yes, that's very interesting.
And then the only problem with even adopting that the hopes that the wrong thinkers will die off, is that it's like the leavening in the bread. There's just a little and it gets passed on to the next generation. So you can't, and unless something does change, it's going to continue. It may not be in the full strength it was in the generation that should have passed, but it's still going to be there, which is where we are with racism. There,
Right.
that it's been passed down as a legacy to some people, and its effects continue to be affecting people all over the world. So we can't afford to wait for everybody to die
No,
off for
no.
that to make the change.
Something has to change. You know,
Right.
I've always worked in the social sciences, and we always say you never, in any kind of thing, well, I'm an economist, so you never see just the economy going straight up like that. There's always up and down and up and down. And the important thing is the trend. That's what they teach, you know. So, you know, we're doing good. We have a recession, we come back. We have a boom, we have a depression, we come back. Is the trend upward is the thing to keep your eye on. And how do these terrible events like Trayvon Martin, you know, do they help get the trend up? I don't know. And what do we do to be part of that change that brings the trend back up? I don't know. I mean, does the generation have to die out? like Maxwell said, I don't know. But it's certainly something to ponder.
If we look at slavery, think about how many generations have passed. And it's almost like we're going backwards, not forward. And
Forward.
when I look at this poem, I think about the fact that fingers in the dirt, you feel like you're planting something that's going to grow and survive and bloom. And then all of a sudden, if you don't fast forward, you'll miss it. And that's what happens to those young men that are mentioned. They really were doing something, you know, good, bad, or whatever, but they were doing something, but they never got to the end. We don't get a chance to see what they could have become because of hatred and you know, this whole idea of people thinking they're superior to others. And so that's what I see in this. I mean, you know, we plant and we wait and we hope to see, you know, the end result, baby's breath, you know, the cosmos and all of those. And people are the same way. We have children and we nurture them and we want to see them to their fullest potential, but that doesn't happen because these and many others have been cut down in the prime of their life. And so we have no idea what they could have become. And so it's just sad.
The other line that jumped out to me, besides the one about fingers in dirt meant it was our dirt, was the one that men like me and my brothers filmed what we planted for proof we existed before. So that jumped out. That it's kind of like how they say on the internet thing is like, if you don't have video, it didn't happen. That it's sad to think that you have to have video proof that you existed.
I've been trying to leave this discussion for 15 minutes. I really do need to go, but this is so good. I'm really happy to hear that you're discussing these really important issues. And I know some good writing is going to come out of this too. So just wanted to say that and say thank you. And I'm going to head on out. So
I have to go too.
We're just gonna
Great to be here. Great to be here. I always come away with something to think about. That, you know, I know I'm going to go and I'm going to ponder how to get that curve going back up.
Yeah, thank you for attending. And then we're gonna spend the next 15 minutes writing for whoever is on here. And I apologize for disappearing. The one time I actually lose Wi-Fi, of course, it's awkward. So I'm glad that the discussion continued. So I want to just allow anybody else to share. And then let me make sure I have the right slide because that would be something. I would do. Okay, so I know ideally I like 30 minutes of writing, but we did some time for intros and waiting for a couple of folks. So I'm happy to do less writing or more if we want to stay on. But let me pause this before it goes too far. And oops. Sorry, my brain is not working. Let me have the screen, pause the screen, and then also have us write for 15 minutes and ask if that's everybody's comfortable with that. Again, just because my topic is the topic I introduced and the poems I introduced are heavy doesn't have anything to do with your poetry, meaning yours can be less heavy if you're interested. So I wanted to offer that. And does everybody feel comfortable with 15 minutes of writing, and then we'll come back together for the last couple of minutes? So just like, I don't expect poetry to, I don't consider myself somebody who's prescribes poetry a certain way, and I don't expect poetry to come out a certain way. So if that gives anybody some relief, just to write whatever you want, but think about community. And I want to focus kind of just on description, because, you know, like in the second poem, they used a lot of description and vivid imagery. And in the first poem, she also set up the scene. And again, it was some dialogue in there as well. So just think, like, however you want to interpret that. I just put description as an umbrella term, but think of descriptions that come to mind when you think about community, and just list those out and then pull one of them and then go and start writing with that. So we'll do that for 15 minutes, and I'll set a timer, and then we'll just come back here probably really close to 1:30 and then see if anybody wants to share. Let's do like 3 more minutes-ish. All right, if people want to wrap up. Who would like to share about their process or actually share their writing?
I can share mine. It's been a
Okay.
while.
Yeah, please. And you're welcome to read slowly. I want to make sure others can hear you. My Wi-Fi has been weird.
Okay. It says, when I hear the words, why the cage bird sings, I can only think about my life and how I've experienced being lifted on wings. But the life of those lost is a constant thought on my mind, no longer hearing their voices, lives left behind. When will we arrive at a place where we can all have peace, loving and caring, and all hatred cease? Just a quick ask to lighten the load. We've lost too many. Justice did not hold. Give us some days where we can all soar on wings, and then maybe we'll know while the caged bird sings. That was mine.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Was everybody able to hear that? My Wi-Fi has been choppy. And I think it's continuing to be choppy because everybody's face is frozen. But if somebody else wants to read, please go ahead. And then we can wrap up.
Mine's not done, but I guess I could share. Okay. I'm not satisfied with the ending, but basically the title is Community is Family, and it has an epigraph from Harper Lee from To Kill a Mockingbird. You can choose your friends, but you sure can't choose your family. And they're still kin to you no matter whether you acknowledge them or not. And it makes you look right silly when you don't. My parents were both from large families. My father's from one set of parents. My mother's from multiple marriages and separate children groups. The difficulties of my brother's birth made my parents reconsider the size of their future family, and I have only one sibling. But I have a large family that grows daily, family forged by history, by belief, by love of literature, by commonality despite our differences. And then I need to come up with a better ending, but yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Did everybody get to hear Karen? I appreciate you sharing, Karen. And I know you shared before, so that is lovely. I can't see anybody because my screen is tripping clearly, but I want to see if people can hear my voice. If you can and want to read, I want to give an opportunity to Sharon to read. I'm happy to close out by reading my own poem, but I don't know if my audio is coming through well. So somebody can drop that in the chat or verbally let me know.
Your audio is good. And actually, so is your video for us.
You said my video is working or is frozen?
Yeah, your video is fine.
And my voice?
Yeah.
Okay, well, maybe you all are just frozen. Nobody's moved for like 2 minutes on my screen. I think it's my Wi-Fi. Miss Sharon Scott, do you want to read or?
Well, I actually came in late, so I'm not sure I'm even doing the right thing, so I'll pass this time. Did you guys hear?
Well, now you
Now
froze.
Fariha's frozen. Yeah.
Well, and where did Linda go?
Linda said that she needed to jump out for a meeting, so she left at 1:31.
Well, I think if you're not going to share, Sharon, is that everybody?
Yeah, because Charlene just left too.
Well,
Unless you're sharing, Casey.
No.
You were working real hard there.
I was setting up another Zoom, so that might be why everyone's cutting out. I guess it's just one of those days, but well, thank you for joining us, Sharon and Karen, and Fariha, if you hear me. Oh, you're back,
Yeah,
Fariha.
Yeah. I don't know if Charlene had to leave, but I was just offering if Sharon wanted to read, and if not, I can read. If not, nobody has to read. So.
Sharon, she's not ready, so she joined too late. So
okay.
And Charlene had to leave.
Okay. Yeah. Can you all hear me and see me now? I know my internet's weird.
You kind of froze with the video. It could be on my end too, because I had to set up another Zoom for some fellow employees. So I don't know what it might be, but yeah, you're the only one freezing. And if we're freezing for you, it might be your Wi-Fi. So
Yeah. Okay, no, that's fine. I can always share next time. I want to share just in case we want to close out, but we're already over. So Karen, I hope to see you and Miss Sharon next session, which is not Tuesday, but like third Tuesday T.
Okay.
And then if anybody doesn't have any questions, I
course.
appreciate you coming. And I hope that you take some time to like allow yourself to move past the heaviness in your own writing, just because I know that stuff was heavy. And I'm glad that Karen, you wrote something more promising. I did too, just to spin it around. I wrote something about myself that wasn't as heavy. So I hope you have a lovely rest of your afternoon and continue to write. And then we will meet back here on the 15th.
All right.
Sounds like a plan, and you as well.
All right.
All right, thank
See
you.
you all.
Take
Bye.
care.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.